some groans, but it's pretty funny. I told you I'm a comedian. All my jokes are good. I'm thrilled to introduce the next speakers who are going to speak about data governance and data analytics. It's a very, very key part of the innovation ecosystem. I can't underestimate there's so many different ways where data is impacting the rest of technology right now. So I'm thrilled for this. I'm just so excited about this panel. So we have several folks. If we want to welcome up Mrs. Shirley Reed. Miss America. She is. We need stashes next year. She's an SES member, currently serving as Director, Emerging Capabilities and Systems for DFAS. In this capacity, she develops and leads key strategic efforts focused on delivering cutting-edge technology initiatives. She's a leading worker to expand talent management, workforce skills, and advanced technologies, data analytics. She is also a 2023 Presidential Rank Award meritorious recipient. I'm sure a lot of hard work went into that too as well. And then let's welcome up to the stage Mr. Ryan Busby. Who is currently serving as the Deputy to the Commander for the U.S. Army Financial Management Command. Mr. Busby serves as the Principal Advisor, Commanding General, ensuring the two-star command delivers precision, enterprise-wide financial operations to integrate, synchronize, and sustain the battlefield through the Joint Strategic Area. He also advises the command's direct support at the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Financial Management and the Comptroller in their role as Principal Advisor. Let's bring up Chris Cruz. Mr. Chris Cruz. He's the Program Manager of the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, also known as DFAS, to a lot of those in the Indy area and beyond. He is with the Data Analytics Center of Excellence. In this capacity, he oversees a team of 5 data scientists and 3 data analysts that create analytic capability to deliver business insights focused on cost, quality, and decision-making together for DFAS to better serve their customers. He has 18 years of experience in a variety of different areas, and he leads the DFAS Indianapolis Operations Robotics and Data Analytics teams. He's definitely he has a lot on his plate. I'd like to bring up Mr. Joe Early. As the Senior Director of the R&D Solutions at MetroStar, where he focuses on innovative integration of machine learning, data scientists, and AI technologies. In this role, he develops executive tech and operations strategies, leads research initiatives, drives open source software collaborative efforts. He's a former Navy flight officer and current Navy reservist. He served over 15 years in the U.S. Navy, specializing in E-2D and E-2C Hawkeye aircraft joint and combined C4ISR operations as well. And last but not least, our lovely moderator, Mr. Mike Hagerty today. He currently serves as the Managing Director at Blake Willson Group. Previously, he had a military career spanning 26 years in the U.S. Army. Anybody ex-Army people? All right. His Army journey began in 1998 when he was commissioned as an armor second lieutenant and culminated with him retiring as a colonel while serving as a comptroller for the U.S. Army Special Operations Command. Welcome.
Thank you. All right. So first of all, I don't have a joke. And second, I've never been called lovely before, so thank you. Hey, so we'd like to jump right in here with a question for the panel. So this one is for Ms. Reed, Brian, Mr. Busby, and Mr. Cruz. So can you share specific examples of how your organizations are leveraging modern data analytic tools to drive improvements in efficiency and decision making?
Well, I have a microphone, and all I can say is thank you for the invite today. Sure glad I wore pants. Just kicked Ryan trying to cross my legs, but I'm sure all of you are happy I wore pants too. It's a good thing.
Reminded me.
say, efficiencies in our operations and around data analytics, that we've been on a journey at DFAS for probably the last 4 or 5 years. And when I first came to that agency, they did a lot of descriptive, so a lot of look back analytics, what happened 3 months ago. That was the stale data that we were really using. And we have grown in our array, so some of the tools that we're using, Power BI, Click Dashboards, Python and other things. And the one example that I would share with you is, if you can picture, we have call centers, and we take literally hundreds of thousands of calls every year in our call centers, and we had a lot of data, right? So, but it's always been challenging for us to staff our call centers. Low grades, people, frequent turnover, they're either getting promoted up or they're moving out. So moving up or moving out. And we had lots of data that talked about or showed us, the call volume, the types of calls we were receiving, our staffing levels, our abandonment rates for calls. And so we've used data analytics in that area and got predictive in building models using that type of data to understand what our staffing needs might be, how do we develop staffing plans, how do we understand our budget and our spend plans in those areas. And so I would share that that's how we've gotten more efficient in our operations in using data analytics. So
I guess I'll go. I'm also glad I wore pants today. So I'd say FEMCOM's pretty immature in its use of data analytics. It's something that I beg, plead, and try to coerce people into helping me with every day, because we're relatively small to command. We've got about 1,200 people, but about 1,000 of them are manning our AMPOs and spread out across the world. So centrally in our headquarters, we're under 200 people. And so we have a lot of partners. I mean, we use DFAS. They create a lot of tools for us. We have some citizen developers. We have a direct support relationship with the Assistant Secretary of the Army. So we tap into those resources as well. But what I'd say is the Army collectively has a bunch of tools out there for use, but our communication out to the field is not very good at communicating what's out there. So I was really lucky. I had the opportunity to go to some training 2 weeks ago, and I was with a bunch of IT folks, and I learned about capabilities that was completely separate from the training, just from the conversations we had. So I've brought back some stuff. Army has 3 different GPT tools that we have access to. So initially, I've tried to incorporate that into my daily life, plus share that with my staff. Power BI has really taken off this last year. I use on a daily basis a lot of tools that DFAS has created to help monitor travel payments and other statuses of things that we have responsibility and oversight for the Army at large. And so really just tapping into those tools, but citizen developers and people that have inherent capabilities that are separate from what they were hired to do, trying to identify those and tap into programming and coding capabilities. We have Power Apps that we use that are really a tool that's made for people in that world. So we're trying to get our arms around all of the data, and I'll say we've started. We have a little bit that we've done, and the possibilities are endless.
I'd say DFAS for kind of varying levels of maturity. So one of the things we look at is kind of a major mission or function, and where are they at on the maturity level. So one of our recent efforts with our civilian payroll, so I believe over 1 million parolees in the Department of Defense and even the Veterans Administration. So pretty decent sized workforce of over 300 people, managing over 40,000 requests for either research on their accounts, historical records or some sort of action that needs to be taken on your payroll. So important mission, get paid right. We help them enhance or level up their capability through taking their data from raw format into something usable. And so we build a lot of dashboards. So with Power BI, we took 2 of their workload management tools and brought those together and paired it with their workforce data. So really seeing, we even use timekeeping to see where people are spending the time, kind of get the equation of productivity. And then there's even some capability to identify how long different workload takes, which gives us some ability to formulate projections as well as anticipate where the demand will be in the future. And it's really, I think, kind of marrying up, I think that's a common thing for us, is marrying up that workforce and workload analytics together.
All right, just hold the microphone. So you all mentioned multiple data analytic tools such as Power BI, Advana. And so can you talk about how these tools are transforming your business operations? And we'll start with you, Chris.
So varying levels of maturity. At the most mature, we've got the DoD platform called Advana, which we're a player on, but I'd say weren't the original founders. And so we're getting up to speed a little bit. So when we do work on big DoD data projects, we do bring, I'll say, upskilling to get our folks advanced on Databricks and Click. And so we have navigated, a recent project would be to look across the defense travel system to look at disbursements and collections. This was to advise, as we look to retire a system that the DTS flows through, that's an Air Force system, they needed good data to know kind of where the impact across the DoD and the travel budget was. And so that's at the most mature. Power BI is more power to the people, and it's widespread. And so we've been on a kind of long journey. It's pretty recent, but getting the power at the data practitioners and then down to those technology folks that are in the functional areas. And so this is a collaboration between our IT department that sets up the user licensing, the infrastructure, and then we help represent for the functional voice of how will we use it, where do we generate ideas of how to use it, and then how do we do effective governance around anything that we build.
Yeah, I'll say for Army, we have our own partition or enclave within Advana, and I'll just tell you as an accounting nerd, it's an accountant's dream. So we've never had all these sets of data together in one place. So we've leveraged Advana to build reconciliations and look at data differently than we have in the past. And it's really matured us in our audit and pushed us forward to be in a better position to achieve auditability. Our most recent item that we're working on right now is really tied to military pay. So we have ownership over the military pay offices that service members, when they have a pay issue, can go in and get assistance and get their pay corrected. It's a really complex environment right now. One, we have huge budget constraints, so we see our numbers reducing. On top of that, we've got multiple systems now that are processing pay. So we brought IPSA online, but we still have legacy DJMS that's being used to actually pay the members. It's being fed data from IPSA. And so really, when you look at the workload, there's so many different work streams that flow into what causes a unit of work for our AMPOs. And so we're working right now either within Advana or Vantage to create a data lake of all this information, because really when you look at the workload, it's managed from the bottom up. You have to go out to individual AMPOs to be able to see what's driving their workload and if they have backlogs, what's their timeliness, when we really should be able to manage this from the top down. And if we can pull all these work streams together and really start to look at the data holistically instead of in different slices, we can identify root causes to go after that will really make an impact to the workload and help prevent people from needing to come in to get help in the first place. And so I'd say like tools like Vantage and Advana, they're really game changing, and they're things that we need to look at and figure out creative ways to leverage so that we can become more efficient and combat some of the cuts that we're taking. And
I think I'm going to be more optimistic than Chris and say that we're I think, very mature in some of our areas, in particular with the data scientists that we have on board. DFAS has more data scientists than any other defense agency in the department. We've done more hiring of data scientists, and so the work that we did, we have had a call from OSD EFT to help with the universe of transactions for fund balance with Treasury and audit, very important to the department. And that caused us to have to upskill some of our employees initially, and we got great help from our IT partners at DFAS who brought the resources as we were on this journey to try to, bring that real talent on board. So universe of transactions for the non-financial people, think about it like your checkbook and all the activity that happens in your checkbook. And for audit purposes, we have to build this universe of transactions for the auditors to know that we have completeness in all of the funding, the disbursements and collections. And so we have done that, and so met the challenge for audit, delivering that capability. And then also an advantage, improper pay detection tool. And I bring this one up because we're bringing the Navy on board next year, and so we'll have kind of the complete complement of all the systems that are entitlement systems within the department, moving towards having everything in one location in Advana. Once you have the data there, then you can start applying different technologies, right? You can bring in AI in the background, and why that's important is, I don't know if you're all tracking, but recently down in the Army, what was her name, Janet Mellon, $100 million of fraud, and a grant program that was a youth program for military children that did not exist. And that didn't really occur on the financial side, right? That began with contracts and just, that whole, she was able to create that whole end-to-end. What tripped her up? The IRS. So, and I was just looking, she had, 15 years in prison for that. But, so where do I see the future? I think, we'll apply various technologies, so it'll not just be data analytics, but we'll look at, AI on the back end of our improper pay detection tools. We'll bring in other types of data. And I think that we're untapped, and Chris mentioned, looking at travel data and where that occurs and across the department. But think about it, what's your improper pay rate right now for travel? It's probably, 7-10%, and that's after, and when I say improper pay, it doesn't mean that people have been paid erroneously. Sometimes it's just unsupported or bad receipt or something like that, but still a problem and a challenge for the department that hasn't been solved. Despite all the effort behind it, everyone is 7 to 10%, somewhere in there. And so I think that would be a great use case to bring forward.
So you talked about all the great things that are happening with data analytics in your organizations. What are some of the challenges you faced as you've implemented some of these systems, and how have you overcome them? And I'd like to include Joe in this comment as well.
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the challenges, I think issues that we faced, and this is coming from one of our data scientists, is bringing everything together. So if we think about technology, if we have the technology, do we have the right data, and is it good data that we're bringing together? And then do we have the people and the personnel that we're bringing in that not only may be the analytic type, but also the consumer type as well. And having, I think one of the challenges is just bringing those people all together in one place to affect whatever data challenge you're after. And then change management, of course. So we've been doing digital literacy campaigns, trying from the leadership down to get people to understand, the new technology, where we're headed, how we're headed, our direction. But DFAS has 11 to 12,000 employees at any one time, and about half of those are technicians. And so they're lower graded, and technology is changing their work environment pretty rapidly, and that will continue to increase. And so what we're looking at is, how do we bring people through change, and what is the impact, and understanding the impact to the people. And so, all of us who are technologists, we're out there and we're like, hey, we're gonna deliver this, it's the coolest thing ever, oh my gosh, we're just saved, 10 work years or whatever. But at the other side of that, those 10-year work years are people, and so we have to bring them through change, whether that's upskilling, reskilling to something else, and sometimes it's just redeploying people. So they don't want to, they're at a point in their career where they're not interested. So we've got to, take care of our people.
Yeah, I'll really hit on the people side of it. We have people that are comfortable with the way that they do their work today. They don't want to change. They don't trust technology. So, there are a number of different ways that we have a forcing function. Sometimes you have to bring a hammer, take a tool away, take access away so that they can't do things the old way. But that's really the last resort. So, really trying to get people comfortable with it. We've done some training sessions where we bring people in, put them in front of their computer, let them play around with the technology, kind of ask them questions. If we've developed something like a dashboard, asking them what additional information would be helpful, trying to bring them into some of the decision-making process about how it's used and what data is available, and really just trying to be positive and communicate the benefits that we're going to receive from it. The other piece of that on the people worried about losing their job, we openly communicate that you're not going to lose your job and try to express the benefit and how this is going to help the Army at large when we're implementing these technologies, and then really trying to get them to embrace the change and be part of the solution.
Yeah, thanks. So from my experience as I was transitioning out of the Navy, I was part of the creation of Kessel Run. I was the F-35's second Chief Digital Transformation Officer and first Chief Data Officer. So I lived the Valley of Death and what it took to get out of there, and how you adopt new technology, and whether it's changing people, whether it's a complex ecosystem, or whether it is analysis paralysis in the fact that you have so many tools you don't know where to go. So I'll actually go back to Ms. Dix's ecosystem, innovation ecosystem, where each one of those nodes represents a person. So the faster we can get a person integrated into your ecosystem, what we do is we actually start to take advantage of what's called Metcalfe's law, where one person added to the ecosystem does not equal one. It actually includes n times n minus 1 over 2, which is a vast order of magnitude improvement to the rest of the network as we get more access to users. So the better our new tools can reflect the needs of our users, and the faster those users can adopt that solution, the better your ecosystem is going to be, whether you're looking at change or whether you're looking at adoption of new solutions integrated within old technology. So that's where I'd go first, is make sure that those solutions are user-driven, and the fact that you're getting feedback as fast as possible to the general ecosystem.
Thanks. So a couple of you mentioned along the way citizen developers or citizen data scientists. Can you share how your organization is empowering citizen data scientists to enhance data-driven decision-making and innovation? And we may need to start with a kind of what is a citizen data scientist? I don't know, I threw that one in there. Hopefully you got a good answer for that one, Brian.
I'd say just someone that comes in with the skill set to be able to program or look at things differently. And so I'll say, like, the answer to the first part of the question is however we can. If we have people embedded, we find out they have a capability, we have teams that have analysts on them. We may try to slide them into one of those positions so that thinking is one of their full-time jobs. If we don't have that capability, we try to free up time. I'll say with the citizen developers, these are diamonds in the rough. It's really, really exciting when you find them in your organization. And even if they're not a subject matter expert on the work that you're trying to transform, I've found a lot of success in pairing them up with subject matter experts where they just talk back and forth, where the subject matter expert can give the requirements or the outputs that they're looking for, or explain the data or the relationships with the data, and they're able to be set free and develop things that are really useful for the team.
Thanks.
So I'd say one thing we do at DFAS fairly well is we host a community of practice. So my group hosts monthly forums, we have a blog, we have SharePoint site, and so it is focused on the data leaders and data practitioners that are doing this as their full-time job, but it's open to everyone. And so I think that's where they can loop in and get mentorship and be awareness of what people doing full-time data work is like. And so another thing that we've done is to try and help create a map for those interested in getting to data careers within DFAS. So we have huge accountant and financial management series is where the preponderance of our professional workforce, non-IT, is at. And so a lot of times you're working with the data, you find a curiosity of the data, so we explain to them how you can upskill, how you can go back to school. DFAS has tuition reimbursement. Definitely ways to keep investing in that, and then work your way into a data career if that's something you're passionate about at DFAS.
Yeah, because I want to add something to that. So I like to call them citizen technologists, because I think, it is beyond, we have RPA, we have data analytics, we have a wide array of capabilities and platforms, and so we're exploring the Power Platform and Power BI and Oracle Apex, and that allows citizen developers, citizen technologists to go out there and work in those environments. And then what else do I want to say about that? So with those technicians that I mentioned, when we take them through change, I would say that there's probably a top 20% of them. There's some people that don't want to change, some people that will like, okay, just show me what I need to do now. But there's a top 20% that say, I want to develop in those technologies. I want to, and they really can excel. So it's been kind of a good experience. So we're leading an effort this year, change management for digital technologies, as part of our strategic initiatives, focused on our technician workforce to help them become, if they want to become, citizen technologists.
Can you talk about how you've maybe structured your teams to take advantage of the citizen technologists in your organizations?
So in several ways. So under emerging capabilities and systems, I have our Data Analytics Center of Excellence. I also have 2 teams that work in Advana, one that is doing sustainment work. So they're doing, as the OSD EFT teams develop applications, of course, you have to have a sustainment model, and DFAS kind of is that sustainment model for them. So we're going to be passed over some of the data applications that they have. And so we're structuring in that way, posturing for the future. But also, I would say, Chris leads a Data Analytics Center of Excellence, and under that, and throughout all of our sites, we have data cells. And those cells are kind of governed by the Data Analytics Center of Excellence. So we kind of look at what they're doing, make sure it doesn't have enterprise-wide applicability, and if it does, we kind of bring it into the fold. And the data scientists, we only allow data scientists in emerging capabilities. They're not throughout our agency, and that was very intentional. We didn't want to dilute. I think and you get a data scientist, and you get a data scientist, but we're there to support as well. So we bring the resources when they need our help across, and help to mentor those data teams along. And really, we have data cells throughout the agency. We find them in human capital. We find them in other areas that are not atypical.
Yeah, I would say formally, like the Assistant Secretary of the Army has a team of data scientists. They're really focused on Advana, RPA, and I'd say focus on the accounting side of the house. But we're a subordinate command to Army Material Command, and they also have an emerging technologies team as well that we can tap into. Now, the problem for me being a subordinate command is I'm impatient and we have needs right now. So something that we've done is we've actually or go through a process every time we have a vacancy, and I've actually stolen a few positions to create this capability within FEMCOM.
Okay. So, we talked about the citizen technologists and what they're doing to help your organizations. Can you talk about some of the challenges that come with developing homegrown systems? We compared some of the enterprise-wide systems, and what these challenges include stability, integration, long-term maintenance. Can you talk about those challenges?
So things that we're seeing in industry and things that I learned coming out of government were, one, they work best together. We talk about Advana, we talk about the Power Platform across Microsoft, and one thing that we understand a lot is now open source. And the complementary way in which you adopt these technologies helps your organization at different maturity stages. So early in the process, what you do want to go into a Microsoft type ecosystem, where you can help get the executive teams involved in the power of the understanding the power of the platform and the ease in which you can actually get Power BI integrated. And then next is that next level of maturity, which is you have an ecosystem like Advana that helps bring data analysts, citizen analysts to the forefront to start understanding that. But where we're going right now, especially with the research labs that I've seen across the DoD and civil services is we are at a gap where you need to go from OT D&E or RDT&E to the actual edge, that warfighter's ecosystem. There's a significant gap there. And so while Advana is very good at doing some things, we still struggle with licenses. So how are you going to have a homegrown ecosystem that's compatible with licensing when you're trying to federate? Because that cost feels like a tax to the rest of the organization, and the acquisition strategy actually struggles to achieve scale because you can't afford it. And that's where we start to see the homegrown solutions being that next level of maturity. What tools within an open API, linchpin type principle, I'll call them principles, right? Still Advana type principles as well, to enable the organization to innovate at the pace of adoption where you have fast moving technology, bring things in, maybe have a playground, but at the same time serve what are the analysts within Advana, and then serve the executive team that lives in Power BI. And even limitations across things, tools like Click, right, where you have configuration limitations that don't tell the whole picture, right? How do you actually match what's being asked from the warfighters to communicate with them and communicate with the analysts what they're seeing? And now you have complex services environment. So what we're seeing at MetroStar and what I'm seeing across a lot of other system integrators types is the definition of system integrator is changing in order to meet those needs, because you no longer have a Microsoft specific system integrator. You no longer have like an Advana specific system integrator. You've got to ask more from industry, right? We're ready to answer more of the call to be agnostic of those solutions, because you have to be fluent across what I call the valley of death. That bridge that connects those licenses to the warfighter needs and the pace at which they need it doesn't match the enterprise speed at that level. So those are ways in which I see there's an actual compatibility from industry across homegrown ecosystems and enterprise environments.
Chris, did you want to answer the question too, Chris?
Sure. I'll take a slightly different angle on that one. So I just kind of think about where development's done. And so I would say, hearing from Ryan is, the operational mission areas are not patient. They can't wait around for a specific data group or an IT group to build them something. And so you still got to allow that ability to innovate within, like locally, and upskill, your citizen technologist. And so I'd say we've done pretty well on the Power Platform rollout. So as as you might know, it gets complicated on your licensing structure, but ours is everyone can have the desktop application, and then we control the pro licensing through a limited group, so more like hundreds, and then we control it through workspace and publication control. And so it does allow the creation, but it does also allow kind of a review before we publish to make sure that the data owners are aware that you've built something with their data. Also make sure that there's not an alternate means to also get to this information, and then to ensure the controls are there, that you're not bypassing what the system controls are in publishing your data in a place that puts it at risk for people that don't have authorized access.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, Army has 3 GPT models. I mean, when I look at that, that tells me we have waste. We've had people and resources essentially trying to develop the same thing. And the way GPT models work is the more use that they get, the more they learn, the better and more efficient they become. So there's risk where you don't have oversight, and people are starting up their own projects, that you have duplication of efforts and maybe a less optimized output. I see this every time I travel to one of our AMPOs. They're trying to survive. We have a problem. They've created a solution. Solution's left at the AMPO. It's not shared. And every other AMPO has the same problem, where maybe we have 5 different solutions. And so one way we're trying to get at that is we've started a monthly session where people come together and share things that they built or created or new ways of doing business to try to get more communication out there. And then we're trying to figure out some sort of governance at the director level to really decide which ones we want to use and become standard across the entire team.
So I really appreciated, Joe, your analogy of the fluency across the Valley of Death, and you just can't be a Microsoft programmer or whatever. That I think we recognize that in government too, with some of our technologists, that we do need to span across different areas, and machine learning or AI and data science and all of that. And so there's that recognition there. I think we also have within our walls an effort where we're trying to get after user developed applications from years ago. So we'll think about all the access databases. Every accountant creates an Excel spreadsheet, an access, and the ERP. So things that bridge capability gaps in some of the major systems that we have just had hanging out there for all these years. And so we have a dedicated team right now that works solely on that user identified to an authorized IT instance or platform, and wrangling. Somebody who creates a new budget tool and suddenly, Cleveland has it, and then Indianapolis wants their own budget tool that's slightly different, maybe a little bit more improved on that one, and then Columbus does the same thing. And so this group that we have is wrangling all of that together and ensuring that we don't end up with the duplication across. And so that's some of the work that we're doing right now. And we had to create what's the priority, because there's literally thousands of these things out there. Audit as the priority. So what is impactful to financial statements? What might an auditor look like at? And those are the things we're going after first.
Great, thanks. I would like to open it up to questions from the audience. Looks like we have one right here.
Yeah, please. From my perspective as an information security manager at the 76th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, my supervisor and I are interested in operating and doing automation within the Microsoft ecosystem. However, we're faced with Army infantry trained leadership that are naive on how to implement. So my question here is, as IT guys and gals here, how do we teach our peers without engaging in their infrastructure development?
I don't know. No, I think the biggest hurdle, especially at a senior leadership level, for adoption is understanding. You hear you hear AI all the time, but the reality is majority of people don't necessarily understand what that means or what it really can do. It's just a buzzword. So I think if you could find examples of where technology you're interested in has actually been adopted and be able to showcase that, there'd probably be better acceptance to look into what we could do.
Keep leadership as far away from the IT side as possible. So what I did there is definitely a long strategy, right? But take their PowerPoint slides and make what you're doing outcome driven. So how are you making what decisions they have to make on a day-to-day basis impacted, more efficient because of the synapses that you're able to execute within the Microsoft platform, right? So they're not making decisions, they don't want to make decisions around what data you're connecting to or what scripts you're writing. Are those scripts you're writing creating a more manageable environment, a better decision, improved outcomes from what they're seeing? And if it's not improving what they're seeing, measurement matters. You gotta figure out how to speak their language. So there's a little bit of relationship building that has to occur there as well. So I would focus on the outcomes and try to get them as far from the technology conversation as possible, because they're not going to understand that dialect as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. As you guys talk about how you're managing your data, where your data resides, and who's going to access it, you know, recently DISA again is, or I should say has always talked about the fourth estate and consolidating everything under that kind of platform umbrella. How are you looking at the future of your organizations from an IT platform and where your data is going to reside and how you will be able to analyze it in the future and how it might impact, you know, small businesses or other types of local contracting that supports DFAS if there's all this consolidation?
Well, I mean, so this is what I think the struggle from maybe not even a struggle, but from a DFAS standpoint, as part of the fourth estate and falling under the OSD comptroller, and OSD comptroller EFT managing the financial management, I'll say, data for the department. DFAS has a lot of data, right? But the data belongs to our customers primarily, and so we didn't, like the Army said, well, Advan is great, but I need my own enclave. And DFAS has said, no, we're the department, we're a defense agency, we will use the defense agency as Vanna's platform, even though at times we really would like our own. So I don't know about the consolidation. That's the direction I see, and wherever that leads, you know, Advanna may not be out there forever, but it will be something else. So, you know, I haven't heard that they're looking to do anything, you know, different. So maybe not a very good answer, but.
Hi, Nicole from CGI. I appreciate your focus on the people and how they have a really huge task of crossing their own valley of death, right? With this new emerging technology and going from, you know, systems 40 years ago to current systems. You seem to have a lot of knowledge, especially you, Ms. Reed, about how your people feel and what they're thinking. I wanted to know, how did you capture that knowledge? Was it surveys, was it forums, and did you find any of those ways more successful than others?
So I think it was, so we've done all of those things, surveys, forums, and we have a union partner too, who lets us know. I mean, they really have the pulse on the people. And so I meet with the union president and we talk about these things, and you know, part of our strategy is informed by some of that, but also we've been very successful in like having roadshows, like an RPA roadshow. I think an AI, Keith is going to come up here soon and brief, but it's just keeping people informed, and I think that helps to reduce the stress of, I'm not gonna lose my job, you know. Technology can be their friend. It's benefiting many of our employees by reducing the amount of manual key entry that they are doing. You know, I'm gonna talk about RPA and stuff like that. I know, slightly off topic here, but so we're just doing everything that we can, and this change management for digital technology will look at, I think, different areas for development and how we bring people along. And that's going to be our focus this next year, because we're eventually to be workforce shaping, right? So technology is going to shape our workforce of the future. So I'm trying to figure all that out.
Anybody else want to answer the question? Okay.
Hi, I had a quick question for you. So I understand that you guys are using the Advana platform, which is fantastic. It's a great platform, and you have teams of data scientists. What kind of data needs do you have beyond that? Are there any shortages or needs that you guys have from that perspective that might be coming out, and what kind of contract vehicles do you use, and how can small businesses or medium-sized businesses get involved?
So I think some of the emerging needs that we're seeing from a data standpoint have been around the WAF data, right? And how we can use that data, more of that data in the financial systems. And so we're not to the point of, at least on our end, having, DFAS does a lot of things in-house with very little contract support outside of IT. But I think I recognize the value of what industry brings, and so as we talk about, the more and more that we bring Advana sustainment capabilities over, you don't necessarily have those skills of everything that you need to do that, and so there would be industry involvement at that point, and so that's what we're kind of leaning into right now, is having those discussions.
I think this will be the last question.
Hi, I'm Thomas from DFAS. And just a question here, as we're building these and we're developing and we're going down, what are the guardrails we're putting on this, and how are we keeping things secure, STIG, patched, and developing in the life of these programs, and how do we have enough to maintain it once it hits the end of the pipeline and we're putting it out in that production?
That is a question for
I'll take a stab. So it is a little bit of a partnership. So in our world, IT tries to set up the infrastructure where we can play safely and keep us within the guardrails of their authority to operate within that environment. I'd say one of the challenges we have is that you set out policy, but we've got to figure out functionally how do we actually achieve that, and a lot of it is with the identifying who the data owners and where the data actually originates from, and developing those relationships, because some of the expectation is that documentation is how do you obtain your data, what are the controls around who can access that data, and then what is your distribution after that, and where do you incorporate, say, things like row-level security, where people are segmented into only the parts of the data they have a need to know. So it's a work in progress, but I think that's where we have regular recurring meetings with the Power Platform team, and we try to bring the voice of the functional users to just kind of understand how do we actually execute, on these policies. And then some oversight is we have a registry. So before you publish a dashboard, there's a registry, there's a training on publication control that does clearly state your responsibilities as the publication owner to make sure that you have followed the documentation and you do have the controls you say you do in place. So it's pushing down a little bit on functional, which sometimes is challenging, but I think that continued partnership between IT and the functional operations side of the house is important to make sure that you're doing it safely.
All right, I think that concludes this portion of the panel. I want to say thanks to Miranda for having us.
Thank you.